Hi, this is Nick Dawson, the editor-in-chief of Talkhouse Film, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Film podcast. There is a moment in today's conversation between Amber Tamblyn and Aisha Tyler where they talk about how difficult it is in the entertainment industry to be more than one thing. However, the reason for their conversation is exactly because both of them have actively rejected Hollywood's notion that they are just actresses. Tamblyn, who grew up on screen in General Hospital and as the title character in Joan of Arcadia, has increasingly shifted her focus to a long-held passion, poetry, releasing a number of volumes of her work, including last year's acclaimed Dark Sparkler, a collection themed around dead child actresses. Tyler first broke through as a recurring character on Friends and is still very busy as an actress, playing Dr. Tyra Lewis on Criminal Minds and voicing Agent Lana Kane on Archer. But she's also a panelist on the CBS daytime show The Talk, is the host of Whose Line Is It Anyway?, has her own podcast, Girl on Guy, and has written a couple of books, including Self-Inflicted Wounds, Heartwarming Tales of Epic Humiliation. She has also been making strides for some time as a director, and is about to start filming her first feature, Axis, which is in the final stages of its Kickstarter campaign. Tyler chose to speak to Tamblyn for the Talkhouse Film podcast, not only because they are friends, have the same initials, and are cut from the same smart, sassy cloth, but also because Tamblyn's debut feature as director, Paint It Black, based on the novel by White Oleander author Janet Fitch, is set to premiere at the LA Film Festival in June, and thus she was able to talk to Tyler about what to expect as she heads into production on Axis. In Amber and Aisha's very funny and entertaining conversation, the two talk about their respective paths to the director's chair, great LA movies, and keeping up with the Kardashians, why Amber is Aisha's Oreo tit, and Aisha is a sex bot, the happy accident that led to Amber getting Janet McTeer to drunkenly crawl around on the floor and shout at a stuffed polar bear, and much more.
Okay, so Amber, I asked you to do this with me, and I'm super excited. This is not my podcast. This is the Talkhouse Film podcast. But I was excited because, A, I think you're the tits. Like, if there's a version of the tits that's 3 tits, you're that many tits.
I'm like your extra tit, right? I'm the tit,
you are,
right?
You're my extra tit, right? The one in the middle, the nice one, the best one, the perkiest one.
I'm your Oreo tit.
Oh my God, that's adorable. Can you imagine if you could go and find a lady with like 2 brown tits and 1 white tit in the middle, or vice versa?
That'd be kind of amazing.
You wouldn't know what to do with yourself.
I wonder if we combined our eggs, if that's what would happen.
God, I hope not. That would point to some really damaged DNA. But I'm excited to do this because, like, when you and I sat down for my podcast, Girl on Guy, you had you just wrapped, or were you just starting? I can't remember.
I feel like I was just about to shoot it. I was just about to film Paint It Black. I think I got the financing for it, and I watch this interview is gonna come out, and there's gonna be some fan on the comments. It's like, that's not really.
I remember it differently. You were thinking. I've listened back to it numerous times.
You know what? I think I saw you at that writing event.
Yeah, the Penn Center Awards.
The Penn Center Awards, and you were about to shoot it then. And then when I had you on my show, you were just about to go into post.
Okay, well then
That's
there you go.
Happened. There you go. I've unnerded. Nerds stand down. So I guess, since I'm behind you, since I'm just about to shoot something, I just want to ask you about what that experience was like, because you're such a prolific writer, and I wonder, like, what was the process that brought you to making that particular film and making that it was your first film? That's your directorial debut, right?
Yeah, it was my first film. I feel like it was almost a decade-long experiment in not accepting the word no. Mm-hmm. I feel like. So originally the book was given to me in 2005 by Amy Poehler. She gave me the novel Paint It Black, which is written by Janet Fitch, and she's also the writer of White Oleander, right? Yes, exactly. Okay. And I had a feeling that I had never had before with reading a novel, which was that there was this sort of parallel cinematic story that was going on, and that doesn't necessarily mean that, or that I saw rather, that didn't necessarily mean that I was like, this exact story is what I want to turn into a movie, or I see it as a movie. But I felt like there was an emotionality to the film, or to the book rather, that I hadn't really seen in film, which was this idea of really dangerous women, emotionally and otherwise, who were also kind of askew on the moral compass. And I was just really sort of fascinated by that. And so I spent the better part of 7 years, I would say, getting the writer to give me the rights, which she didn't want to do, and then getting financing, which was sort of all upon me as well, to put together a lookbook and create this whole giant thing. I mean, as you know, with your film right now, the process of crowdfunding and and garnering that type of support, it was a long journey, but the actual shooting itself, I think, changed me creatively forever. I think it really was a moment in my life in which I went, oh, wow, I've always been on the other side of this, and felt like I had so much to say, but wasn't really sure how to say it to, frankly, older white men, which is, I'd say, 99% of the experience I've ever had with directors. I think maybe I've worked with 2 female directors, and certainly no women of color. So, it was a totally different experience for me, and a test of, giving myself a permission that I had always wanted, but never really knew how to fully enjoy or experience.
Right. I think there is something about the directorial process that unlocks a different set. I don't know if it's skills, but like the way that you see crafting something, putting something together, it's just a different angle that you're looking at everything at. And I feel like you find out right away in that process whether this is something that you flourish in or whether this is something that you find like, punitive or burdensome. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think either you blossom or you go, oh shit, too many questions. You know what I mean?
It's going to be interesting for you too. Like, I can't wait to talk to you in post once you're editing it, because one of the things I found too, and I don't know, is your film, is it something you wrote, or how did that come about?
No, so it's a totally different process than yours. I'm trying to think of when we last spoke. Like, I had the same thing where I knew for a long time that I wanted to direct, and had a project that I was developing like over a decade ago that John Woo was set to executive produce, and I was super excited. I'd written it, and I was going to be in it. We were going to find other people to do the rest of the stuff. But every time we would have these meetings about it, I would be so like detailed and intimate with
exactly. We're going to talk about second.
Like, I was like, I see this and it needs to be shot like this, and I want it to be like that. And they were lovely. They were like, this is clearly something you should be directing. You're so passionate about it. You have such a clarity about it. And I was like, great. So I'm, at this point, like mid-20s African-American actress trying to direct what was going to be something like a $6 or $10 million action movie. I mean, I could not even get anybody to like pull over like on the bus to pick me up. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just not going to happen. So I just decided I was going to go away and like build up my skill set. So I started shadowing, like every movie I was on, every show I was on, I would shadow, and I would say, hey, can I come in when I'm not working? I would just show up on days I wasn't working and just shadow whatever director was on an episode. I called on my friends and said, can I come, shadow you? I like ended up shadowing, oh God, I'm having a stroke. I ended up shadowing on The Wire, on 24. Oh, wow. And so that was like a process of me just like kind of following people around and asking questions, and trying to not just be an actor who showed up and hit their mark. You know what I mean? Really trying to take in everything that was happening around me. And then 2 years ago, so like summer of 2014, I was like also, I was working a lot, and I was like, I'm too work focused. I'm not like having enough adventures or living. I'm not being human anymore, just like going to work and coming home. I was like, I'm going to start to have more adventures. And I was at
creative either.
Like, not living. Like, you can't be creative if you don't have anything going into your body that's like non-work related. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's a thing that people misunderstand about our business too. And like, they would assume that you or I are incredibly creative people. We are, for sure. But there is a sort of staleness to doing something for so long, and then you forget about the things that push you and scare you, and you forget how much goes on in your head, how much you imagine, and how much creatively you want to do. And so I think certainly for me, I feel like there's a sense of like, well, I already have all this amazing stuff. Like, why do I need to pile on more? Like, why do I need to direct a movie?
Right. But I do think
that's what you really want to do.
That's exactly what you need. Do you know what I mean? And I had this thing where there was this sameness to my life where I was getting into my car and driving to set and acting, and then coming home and then eating kale salad and going to the gym and then driving to set. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm going to die.
You
Like,
sound
I'm going
like
to die
a sex
creatively.
bot.
Oh my God, guys, it was just nothing but pegging and and water play. So John Logan, who created Penny Dreadful, I met him at Comic-Con, and I was like a huge fan of that show. And was just like, plotzing about it. He's like, why don't you come visit set? And people are always telling you to do that. And you're like, yeah, I'll do that. And like, never fucking happens. I was like, fuck that. I'm going. And his show shoots in Ireland. So in Dublin, and I was like, I'm fucking go. I'd never traveled abroad on my own. I was like, I'm going to go to fucking Dublin by myself. I'm going to shadow on that show. I'm going to go shadow on anything else that's over there because it's a long flight. I might as well get my money's worth. And I called the show Vikings and I said, hey, you don't know me from Adam. Can I come hang out on your set? And they were like so gracious and lovely. So I just went over there and I shadowed on both shows. I visited Penny Dreadful. I shadowed on Vikings. And I met all these lovely Irish actors over there. And two of them, one was an actor, writer-actor, one was an actor-composer, were like, we want to do a short film. Do you want to direct it in Ireland? And I think when someone offers you the opportunity to direct in another country, you just fucking say yes. You know what I mean? Just say yes. And I was definitely going through the Shonda Rhimes year of yes before she wrote the book. I was like, yes, yes to everything, yes to new things that might terrify me. Yeah. So they wrote this short, which I loved, and I was working, and the two guys that were working on it, especially the writer who ended up producing it, prepped everything for me. I had like 2 Skype calls with the DP. I showed up the day before we shot. I had like one walking text out, and then we shot. And it was like the best 3 sleepless days of my entire life. Do you know what I mean? I was so happy, happy. Even when things weren't going well, I was happy. Everything about it was just so energizing. And I think that was the piece where I was like, I think it was nice that I had the opportunity to test it out, like on my shorts, because I was like, okay, yeah, now I definitely, not just do I want to do a feature, but I'm ready to do a feature. Like there was no point on set where I was like, oh shit, I don't know how to answer this question. And that was really nice, because I was like, what if I get there and I don't know what the fuck?
Right.
But
right.
I felt like there's always some doubt in everybody's mind, artistically or even technically, but I feel like I never was like, how am I going to figure out how to do this? I was like, of course I want to figure it out. And of course I love talking to actors. And of course I love figuring out how to make the scene better. And of course I want to talk to you about angles. Like everything was so fun. And then that same writer wrote this feature. And that's how it came to me. He wrote a feature, and it's about an Irish expatriate living in LA. And it kind of felt like right to me, setting-wise, time-wise. And the story about somebody who feels like maybe a fish out of water, even with success. And I don't know if you've experienced that. Like you've got some success in your life, but you still feel a little bit like an alien in this world. That's a lot at the core of this. Someone has success in this town, but the result has been that he's kind of self-destructed a little bit, and he doesn't really feel like he's of either this place or home. He's kind of in a in-between space.
Right.
It's lovely, and it's sweet and very emotional, and it's going to be all set in a car. So that's the problem.
Oh, that's kind of cool. That'll give you some interesting boundaries with which you can work within. I asked too because for me it was so interesting the difference between and in my case it was the adaptation of a novel, but you probably found this even on a short film, but there's so much. It's such a different feeling what happens between the script that you go from as a director, and then once you get into the editing room, the film that comes out on the other side.
Oh my God, totally.
It's its own iteration of it's got its own trajectory. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's playing around in the editing room is where you really find the true film that you were meant to make, I want to ask you more about that, because I just went through that on my short where I was cutting it and I was like, oh, this isn't what I wanted at all. This isn't oh my God, this is so much better than what I hoped. Yeah. And I wonder if you had that, you've heard this, or they say there's one movie on the page, then there's another movie when you shoot it, and then it becomes a third movie when you cut it. And I wonder if for you that, if that bore out for you, and by the time you got to post, were there magical things that happened for you that you didn't expect? Because I also likened it to, remember those old paintings where you look at them for a really long time and they're nothing, and then they're a giraffe? Yeah. That's what I felt like editing was for me. That makes sense. And I thought we had a pretty, my co-writer and I, Ed Dougherty, that we'd written a pretty strong script about the emotional interior lives of these two crazy women who were in a state of grief and just like drunk all the time and trying to kill each other.
Sounds like a good time, actually.
That's going to be you and me next Wednesday.
Yes, it will be.
It's, I found out that the strength really relied more in what we didn't say on the screen, in what we implied, in the implications of certain moments, and letting people sort of take what they wanted from that and feel what they wanted from that and sort of glean from those experiences. And that's just something that, you have to have the strength in an editing room to really let your ego go, to really let the fear of like, but this scene I love so much, and and this is such a great moment, and this does work. However you feel, you're blind to the truth of what really does feel. And overall, I would say the entire filming experience was such an instinct, gut level experience, unlike anything that I've used before, where even, when you're talking about shots and the way in which you want to do things, and let's say like you're running out of time, you're running out of, you've got to finish up, you've got to wrap the scene because you've still got 2 more scenes. There was a real sense of like, okay, if I feel pressured, if I feel like I'm put in a corner and there's not a lot of time left, or I need to make a decision and everyone's looking at me to make the decision, I would directly turn it to the instinct, to the thing that was trained to think about, what was the more dangerous of the ideas? What was the less safe thing to do? How could I be less of a director who painted by numbers? Because no matter what, as long as I was getting the language in, traditional shots or whatever, I could always find space to add into that and create something that I might want to use later that I hadn't even thought about. For instance, there's a moment in the film, we had a little bit of extra time, like, 10, 15 minutes at the end of this one shooting day. And we put Janet McTeer in there's this big long hallway in this mansion that she lives in, and we put her in this silk robe, and I gave her a drink, and I just said, just go in the other room and be drunk and upset. And so we did this long lens down at the end of the hallway, visual of her yelling at a stuffed polar bear, at a taxidermied polar bear she's got in her house. And then I'm like yelling across the room. I'm like, Janet, get down on all fours. Like, crawl around. You lost an earring on the ground. And so she's crawling on the ground, holding a drink in her hands. It's nuts. And it made it into the movie. But I think, having moments like that, and that's one of many that ended up in the film, thinking on your feet, thinking instinctually, as you would like with a writer, or probably for you, like improv too. When something just comes to head and you're like, I know that's going to kill. I know that's going to
also, it kind of, it like coalesces kind of without like forethought. You know what I mean? Like, oh God, this would be great. I don't know where this came from, but this is going to be magical. Yeah. And surrendering to that, I think.
And that doesn't necessarily mean, hey, let's put a whole scene in, like I just mentioned. I mean, that's, as you know, that's real luck if you get an extra 15 minutes at the end of a day. But there are things, I think, within the scenes that people can find, and that I had real fun doing, playing around with the actors and letting them, do things that felt a little bit different.
I think also, like, there's a discipline to that, not just in the editing room, but on set, of I trust myself, I trust the material, I trust the people around me, because I think people direct from fear when they don't either trust their team or trust their own artistic instinct. So they do what they've seen, they do what they know, because they're afraid of doing something radical that might not work. But I mean, it's always the happy accidents that feel the most dynamic and the most captivating. Like the thing I've seen in so many films, and I tried not to do it in my short, and I definitely don't want to do in this film, which is this like constant emotional manipulation of people through music. Like telling people how to feel every minute of a movie because you're so worried they're not going to miss your point. I mean, like, if you can't tell the story with just the basic elements of a scene, and music is really important in a movie, of course.
Yes.
And my short was about a musician, so the music was important. But I think the silence between the music made the music that did make it into the movie much more meaningful and much more impactful. And I think I had to really say to myself, like, you don't need to tell people how to feel here. Like, they're going to know. Or maybe they're going to feel 7 different ways, and that's okay too. Like, not everybody needs to walk out of this experience with the same set of feelings. You know what I mean? Like, they can take it 8 ways, which I think is just, when you were saying it requires a certain amount of discipline to let the viewer make their own decisions about how to feel about your art.
one of the things that I can really recommend to you, and it was I had some really great producers as well that worked on my film, Steve Buscemi and Stanley Tucci's company, and their partner Ren Arthur, and just some really rad lady producers who said, you know what, we're going to do a lot of test screenings, because the film is also like a Bergman film. It's like The Hunger or Sunset Boulevard or Persona. It's a little out there, and it's a little borders very delicately on a melodrama, between melodrama and noir. So they were like, they really said it's smart. You want to bring not just anybody in, but you want to bring groups of people in who can help see this film and see what it needs or what it doesn't need. And those were some of the most helpful experiences. And one of the things I found was exactly what you just said, which is that I had gone a little overboard with the music, and we had an amazing composer. We had this guy Mac McCoffin from Superchunk, who normally does, and he founded Merge Records, and he's really known for like punk music and being sort of a staple within the indie punk world. And he created this such an intense, melodic, gorgeous, simple sound. But I had laced it through the entire film, and it was really, I had like a lot of people who had said, you don't need any music in this at all. In fact, Neil Abute was the first one that came to a screening, and he said to me, this movie's really powerful, and I dare you to, show the whole film without any music. Just try it. Because I think these scenes work without it, and you're telling the audience how to feel. He said those exact same words, and I totally agree.
Wow. And so now well, two things. First is, what was the result of that? Like, how much did you pull back? Did you pull back more than you were comfortable or less than you were comfortable?
I took his suggestions. That was the thing, is that I was very open, and I apparently, that may not always be the case for some people, but I was really open to people's, especially if I heard, I think we did maybe 12 screenings, 12 test screenings while editing, 12 to 15.
That's smart.
And we would ask people, like, afterwards we'd sit and have notes, and believe me, those first couple I felt like sick to my stomach.
Oh God, I just sitting in a room watching people watch your project, I literally had to vomit for hours after that. Hours. I couldn't get like that feeling to go away.
Yeah, but that's why you get people who you trust. Like if we'd done this in LA, you would have easily been a person I would have brought in. Like, you're not going to bring in just any random person. You want to bring someone who understands that this is not a finished product. You're looking to find out its strengths and its major weaknesses and figure those things out and make it a stronger film. So I took almost all of the music out, and Neil was right. He was absolutely right. And what I realized within that was that the problem was within the sentimentality of the sound. So I went back to Mac, my editor and I went back to Mac, and we said, let's go more for like Boards of Canada, or let's go more towards weird 80s synth, like as if we're scoring the Dark Crystal. Just let's make it more on the like the ominous, mysterious side than sentimental. And with this story, which is about a young man who kills himself and the two women he leaves behind, the girlfriend and the mother, and they become obsessed with each other in this like really unhealthy relationship. Sentimentality is the last thing we wanted in the sound. So then Mac created a couple signature pieces that are in very specific places, and it was like all of a sudden, without even touching the actual frames of the film, it had become a completely different film with the type of music and sound that we had put in the very specific places that it demanded to be.
And it's amazing how tiny adjustments like that can completely change a film. Change a film.
I want to ask you, what do you think for you right now what's the thing you're most nervous about or thinking about the most out of everything with your, with pre-production? And I mean, you're about to shoot like any day now.
4 weeks from now. And I'm freaking out about, there's so many things I'm freaking out about. How do I pull one out? I mean, like interestingly enough, like on the, like at the base, I feel confident I'm going to get everything done. Like I feel really good about that. I have a good team with me, like really hardworking people. I'm a machine, and that's not even I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just a sick person. Do you know what I mean? I'm like up too late, up too early, always on my computer. Like I have no doubt that the tactical parts of it will get done. I guess the thing I'm most anxious about, or at least thinking about the most, is finding a more interesting way to tell the story. I don't want to be like radical for radicalism's sake, but I want to make it's all in a car. And to me, that's an opportunity, not a limitation. Like I feel like that we know what we're working with. So now it's like, what magical things can we do with this space?
Right.
And the kind of the conventions of filmmaking, master coverage, like we don't have to worry about that stuff. It's just one person in this car. And so I'm thinking about how do we make people feel like they're in the car with this person in a way that feels intimate and close and familiar, but yet a little disruptive. I want it to be beautiful. And how do I do that when I also am limited, in terms of my space? And we can't just rely on vistas or, we have to get angels to dance on the head of a pin. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not worried about that so much as just thinking very hard about what choices to make. And then, it's one actor for a whole movie, and I have infinite confidence in my lead, but I also...
Have you cast? Who's your lead?
So he is an Irish actor. He's really well known in Ireland. He's not well known here. His name is Emmett Hughes, and he is kind of he has an Edward Burns type of backstory. Nice. He wrote and produced and directed his first feature. He was in it. He did everything himself. He made the spaghetti. He's dressed all the actors with his own clothes. You know what I mean? He's one of those things where every day he's this movie's about to fall apart. We're never going to get it done. Got it done. And then, ended up being this festival darling and won a bunch of awards. And so this is his second feature that he wrote and then brought to me.
Wow.
We're going to do it like a play, which I also really like. Essentially, we're going to shoot the whole film every day, all the way through. Wow. Which I think is a heavy lift for an actor. But I mean, I've done theater, you've done theater. You can do it. You can, you're on stage for 2 hours in a play. It doesn't feel burdensome when you're doing a play. Yeah. Somehow it feels like a lot to do when you're doing a film. And I'm really working on why it seems that way. I'm like, oh God, this is crazy. It's typically because you're just setting and resetting and setting and resetting. But we're essentially going to kind of set up our whole, set our whole camera array on the first day and then only adjust from day to day rather than coming up with new sets.
Wow, you're going to shoot the whole film every single day?
Every single day for 6 days.
Wow.
And then we have bookended days to get the open and the close of the movie, which are the only parts of the film that don't take place inside the car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there other examples of people who have shot that way that you know of?
I don't know, and I should actually look at it and see if I can find out what kind of limitations and issues they may have had. I know that Locke, which was also a film set in a car, they shot that in 5 days, but I'm not quite sure how they did that film. I think they might have done it similarly because they had all their actors, they had more money than I do. They had all their actors there every day on the actual phone with Tom Hardy. I can't afford that, and also the people that are agreeing to do my movie all have big separate lives, and the amount of money I'm paying, they can't kind of drop everything for 10 days to just do this, which is fine. So we're pre-recording them. We'll have somebody read across from the actor every day.
How did you creatively come to this as an idea, as far as how to shoot it? How did that actually, because it's such an interesting, great idea, considering again, you don't have to move locations. You're kind of set. So how did that idea come to you?
That was essentially my idea of shooting it all the way through every day. And it came from the fact that I knew we were going to have to do it in a constrained amount of time. And I was worried about matching. I was really worried about matching. The movie is going to go essentially day to night. It'll go afternoon to evening. So I was like, how do I...
Continuity is for pussies.
I love you so much. I feel exactly the same way. Just fucking listen to the story. Stop looking at the background.
Cares about the face.
Exactly. So he's has a tie and then he doesn't have a necktie. Are you feeling things right now? You ass. So to do that, we're kind of doing this almost a real time unfolding of a story that goes from essentially morning to evening. If we start shooting every day at the same time, or at around the same time, and we finish every day at the same time, and we run the same driving course, we will get essentially the same light every day. The way they dealt with it on Lock was they shot at night. But I really want LA to be a character in this movie. I really want people to feel what it's like to live in LA, to drive in LA, to live in your car, to turn your car into your office and your bedroom and your therapist's office and your
So that's so funny.
cafeteria.
My film is also very much an LA centric film. In my proposal for the film, that was one of the things that I said, is that LA is a third character in the film. There's the girlfriend, there's the mother, and then there's Los Angeles. This idea of this city that has so much institutionalized class in it, with the rich people living up in the hills, and then you've got down below in Echo Park and down on the areas of Sunset Boulevard and Alvarado and all those things. And so I totally get what you're saying about wanting that to be a huge part of it. And I also found that shooting a lot of B-roll of stuff was very, very helpful for transitional moments in the movie. That was something that I hadn't fully considered until we were there. And it's like, oh, there's a hawk eating a dead mouse just ripping a mouse's guts open on a.
God, that's awesome.
On a wire, shoot that thing, shoot it.
And that's all. Oh God, it was also like finding those magical things, like those unstudied things. I think LA looks the same all the time in movies, and trying to find a different LA was really important to me. And just hearing, I know you, and I know like how you think, and I just, there's just there's another beautiful, uglier, more wonderful, more complex LA than I think we see in movies. So I'm excited to see your version of that.
Did you see that film, Tangerine?
I did. Oh, I loved it.
That's in Los Angeles, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's beautiful and so not just all of the parts of LA that nobody ever sees. It's great. It takes place in a very tiny corridor. It's mostly along Santa Monica, the Santa Monica corridor, kind of like Highland East.
Yeah.
It's so sweet and familiar if you live here. I loved it. And you know what other movie I really loved about LA that was a little bit more kind of glossy and elevated, but I still really enjoyed it, was Drive. I felt like
I didn't see Drive. I'm a loser. I need to see that.
No, you're not. You have shit going on, stuff you're doing in life. But it is I also really liked that LA. Again, is not kind of like Palm Trees and Sunset, and the lead character and the love interest are poor, and they live kind of in East Los Angeles, and so you definitely see a different LA in that. It's very sweet.
Right.
Yeah.
I also just think the Kardashians is just a really great example of shooting in LA, and I just think that they have such great shots, and I just really love the tone of that show.
The look and the feel, right? And their film.
Who's the director of photography on that film? I just gotta know.
Bill Pope. Bill Pope, she said. Oh my God, that's the thing. There's also there's a wave of just utter crap, reinforcing everybody's idea about what it's like. It's like making LA look like Miami fucking Beach or something like that.
You know what I mean? Very true.
Which for 99.999% of Los Angelinos do not live up in the hills and are kind of mousing along this superheated corridor of asphalt, trying to pay the rent and raise their kids. But yeah, so I think in that way, you grew up here. But I moved here, and I really didn't fall in love with LA until recently, and now I really, really love it. In a way I thought I never would. I tolerated it for a long time, and now I feel like I know it more fully, and it's like a relationship. The more you know about somebody, eventually, their darkness is what appeals to you the most. You know what I mean? If you can accept their darkness, you really love them.
For me, it's very much this is so strange, but. A small town that I just wanted to get out of. It doesn't sound, I know that won't sound right to some people, so Los Angeles, a small town, but I was born there. I was third generation from Los Angeles. I live in New York now, but I'm not telling you because I know you know that. But
people that are listening out there.
Yeah, and I would take my husband David. I remember the first time he came to my place in Venice, and
he hates LA. Oh God, he can't even find words to articulate his.
I'm driving. Yeah, I'm driving past my parents' apartment in Santa Monica. I'm and here's where I was born and raised. They still live here. And then, drive up another 2 blocks. I'm and here's where I gave my first hand job. And then drive up another 2 blocks. Yeah, and like, and it just keeps going on and on. And then, there I am, like, literally I bought a house 6 blocks from my parents, and anyone who knows me knows that. And so there's a sense of, like, leaving the place that felt like a small town to me. So my relationship with LA is very different, but I think I also take it for granted because of that. So like when I was setting out to do this movie, I had to think in those same terms that you did of how can I see this city differently? How can I show it differently? What are the things that I take for granted on a daily basis because I'm from here that I overlook, or things that maybe I see every day that nobody else sees just because I've lived here for so long? How can I show people those things? Like the smog-filled sunsets.
Yes, exactly. The tinged, the orange color of your tears, and then the strange beauty, right? Like there is just this strange beauty that this place has. Like sometimes if you're going down Los Feliz on the 3 days where there's actual like visual clarity in LA, and you can see the mountains, like the Santa Monica Mountains or whatever those mountains are, and they're tipped in snow, and you think you're in Denver for like a moment. It's interesting to try to unpack a place that has so many dreams associated with it.
And also, like, to convey, this is something I thought about a lot with making my film as well, but how do you convey the way Los Angeles smells?
Yes, the way it feels.
And people don't know that, but like every time I get off a plane at LAX and I get instantly, there's this endemic scent that the city has, which is, a combination of many things, including night blooming jasmine and the sleeping bags of homeless people.
Yes, and the kind of gently falling soot. Yes, and the ghosts of people's broken dreams.
Tons and tons of Botox, butt implants. The smell of butt implants. How can we convey that in your film?
Burst butt implants. What does that smell like?
Butt implants. How can we convey that?
It is. It's. I don't know. It has. It's. There's nothing like it in the world. Okay, we should try to wrap it up. But I have one question for you.
Yeah.
And I think it's having gone through this process. You were saying in the beginning of our conversation that you felt it had changed you. Mm-hmm. How has it changed you, like as an artist or a writer?
I think, I'll speak a little bit to that thing you said in the beginning too, which is just, when you said that you had such a specific idea of how you wanted this movie to be made, and people around you saw it before you did. People around you were going, you should direct this, right? And I had a very similar experience. There was another female director attached to do my film for close to a year. And she was the one that finally said to me after we butt heads several times creatively, she was like, what are you waiting for? And that's
amazing. Yeah.
That's a real question. And I thought like, no. I don't know how to do that. And for me, there was this real awakening, this real sense of, why am I waiting for permission? Everybody learns on the job. Everyone figures out what they're doing for the most part while they're doing it. That's the process of life. And what is it that I'm waiting for? Exactly that question. So I think for me, just doing it and doing it the way that I had always seen it and being as daring as I could was my way of answering that question, of not waiting any longer, and just really sort of jumping into that and feeling this sense of control over my art and control over the things that I wanted to be a part of. And which has largely to do with not asking permission from the rest of the world with what you want to do and what you want to say and how you want to say it.
Mm-hmm. I need to tell you something, which is I'm really upset we're doing this on Skype and not in person, because I would be totally making out with you right now because I just gave a speech.
Totally putting on Frank Ocean as soon as you hit it up.
And boosh, lights down, like magically you already had the lights set to go down, because I just gave a speech and people were like, what would you get? What advice would you give? And I was like, stop waiting for other people to give you permission. Yeah. Give yourself permission. You can YouTube, there's a YouTube video to tell you how to do it. I mean, you know what I mean? You can figure out how to do it, but don't wait for somebody else to tell you that your vision is good enough. Like, just go,
Yeah. Really is an exercise in ignoring the word no. And, as women in this business, you hear it constantly because you're kind of only seen as one thing. So you know, it's important. It's you got to keep it as a mantra. I tell everyone same thing, like young students when I'm teaching or whatever, just the same thing of like, do not accept that. It is not acceptable in going forward. You must, you must really do exactly what you want to do and how you want to do it.
Right. And that's why, at least from my end, I didn't have the luxury of waiting for a studio to figure out when they were going to give me permission. And that's why I kickstarted my movie, because I was like, look, I'm going to know in a week or two whether I'm making a movie or not. And then if enough people are excited about it, I'm going to get to go make it. And I don't have to wait for somebody in a suit to tell me why it's not going to work.
Yeah, and the experience is yours, and there's that sense of like, even owning our own failures. Like if it hadn't gone through, or if I wasn't able to get financing for my movie, or even if I'd made a bad film, like whatever that is, the process is inherently mine and it belongs to me. And that makes me work, 10 times harder because I know that those things, the successes and the failures belong to me as opposed to being given to me. And that's the difference. And that I think makes all the difference in the world with whatever you're doing creatively.
Yeah. Well, this is literally, every time I talk to you, I'm just so excited. And your movie's debuting at the LA Film Festival in May.
In June.
June 3rd. Yeah. Oh, I know, that's because I'm shooting that day, so I was freaking out. But if I'm done, if I'm wrapped, I'm coming. And
and no matter what, I'm coming to your set.
Come to my set. I can't wait to see you. And people can visit my Kickstarter right now, which is up until May 5th. And we're awesome. Let's not say that about us.
I think we're pretty great. I think we're pretty
good.
Great.
I think we're good. I think we're a good team. Okay, we're done. Yay! Thanks for listening.
Yay!
This is Nick Dawson from Talkhouse Film, and you've been listening to Amber Tamblyn and Aisha Tyler on the Talkhouse Film podcast. Before you do anything else, visit Kickstarter to help Aisha fund Axis. Kickstarter.com/projects/AxisFilm/Axis. This episode was engineered and edited by Mark Yoshizumi. The podcast producer is Elia Einhorn. For more filmmakers talking film and TV, visit thetalkhouse.com/film. Subscribe to Talkhouse Film and Talkhouse Music podcasts on iTunes, where you can find all our previous episodes. And while you're there, please rate and review if you can.
Do we hang up now?
I don't know.